Hey Internet, this is EA Unknown here, and I'm doing something a little bit different. This isn't going to be any of my usual GTA or Elden Ring videos. No, none of that. Today I want to talk about the Game Awards and what I think about them. So sit back, relax, try to watch this gameplay of me playing For Honor, and let's talk about Elden Ring, shout out to Erdtree, and if it should be eligible for Game of the Year. Now, if you don't give two shits about my opinion or just aren't interested in the Game Awards, then you could just click on a video right here or something in the link in the description below and just watch my older videos. But the thing is, I really want to talk about the Game Awards because it's an interesting topic to me about what is going on and how the community is basically upset at this point. Now, if you live under a rock or just haven't heard of what's going on in the Game Awards, essentially the nominees have just been introduced for potential picks of Game of the Year, which is a really big award. You got Black Myth Wukong, you got Astro Bots, you got this weird card game. I don't know, no one plays it anyways. Well, you got that, but most importantly and most interestingly, you got Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree. Now, this had sparked a small debate in the gaming community whether or not Elden Ring should be eligible for Game of the Year. Because if you don't know, Shadow of the Erdtree is actually not a game, but an entirely DLC to Elden Ring, which is a game itself made in 2022, which, by the way, already won Game of the Year that year.
Game of the Year winner, Elden Ring!
Now you might be asking, what's the big deal? It's a DLC, it got nominated for Game of the Year, that should be amazing, right? Well, it's a bit complicated. Like we said before, Shadow of the Erdtree is a DLC, and an amazing one at that. I put in a ton of hours playing this game, making a few videos on it. Hell, right now I'm making a video on, Midra, one of the few bosses I forgot to fight when I was fighting Radon.
I'm going to rape you!
Ah, wait, what the fuck? Get off me! Wait, this looks wrong! But people are a bit upset about this, and I can see why. Because Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, I'm just gonna refer to it as Shadow of the Erdtree from now on, is a DLC, which is not a full-fledged game. You need to buy a game in order to play that DLC. So for a DLC to get nominated for Game of the Year, it's incredible. Like, it's rarely happened in the past few years of, Game of the Year. But the thing is, people are upset claiming that the Game Awards changed the rules at the last second so they can nominate Shadow of the Erdtree for Game of the Year since it's that good, or they're just like picking favorites or whatever. But don't get me wrong, Shadow of the Erdtree is really fucking good. I love it so much. I put in so much hours in the DLC. It's hard, the lore is amazing, the boss fights are fun as fuck. Everything about it is just great, but it's Game of the Year? This is really complicated though. Well, the thing is, I don't think Elden Ring should be Game of the Year worthy, or Shadow of the Erdtree should be Game of the Year worthy. I think they should make a whole separate category, for DLCs only. Nominate the best DLC that came out this year, best one gets picked for that award, yada yada. But the problem is that not that much games have come out with good DLC, or like good expansion packs or whatever. But most times, they come out with crappy DLC that isn't worth your wallet. Sorry, I had something in my throat. So you can't really make a whole category for, best DLC of the year if there's not that much DLC or rivalries to actually contend for DLC of the year. So it's a bit of an awkward position. Like, should Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree actually win Game of the Year since it was that good? Or should it just not be a contender since, it's DLC on its own? Now, you got some people claiming that, oh, they changed the rules, at the last second, stuff like that. And I think that's fair, but I can't really find any evidence for DLC to be eligible for Game of the Year. I've only been seeing, recent results of Shadow of the Erdtree being nominated for Game of the Year. So I don't know if this rule was already in place for the past few years and if it just came to light right now. So I can't really tell if they're actually picking favorites or not since we don't know what year this rule was in place. Maybe it could have been a rule since the beginning, or it could have been a rule since 2017 or 2016. But so far I haven't found any hard evidence that DLC was already eligible to be Game of the Year for like years ago. Now, back to the discussion. Should Shadow of the Erdtree win Game of the Year? Well, yes and no. I can't really say. I mean, this is just coming from your like an average person that just loves playing video games from time to time and enjoys, you know, games like Dark Souls 1 and fucking Elden Ring. From my personal perspective, I can't really say if Elden Ring should win Game of the Year again. I mean, it is like a bit of an a-hole-ish thing to do, because like I said earlier, Elden Ring already won Game of the Year back in 2022, beating God of War Ragnarok that year, which is great. You know, it deserved it. So for it to like come back like 2 years later to try to win Game of the Year again, when you have other contestants like Black Myth Wukong and Astrobot, it's a bit of an insult, to say the least, because you already won Game of the Year once. You're just coming back 2 years later to try to win Game of the Year again as a DLC. It's a bit disrespectful. Now, Game of the Year should be nominated for games that exceed the expectation of players, that are like really good, phenomenal games that will be remembered for years and years later to come. Which I don't think Shadow of the Erdtree deserves that title so much. Maybe it should be given to like Astrobot for like his fucking gameplay, everything about it. It's just, you know, so the art design, soundtrack, how it's like all cutesy and robotic and stuff, all these PlayStation references inside the game, it's just great. Everything about it is great. It's memorable. Like, that deserves Game of the Year too. And then you got Black Myth Wukong with all this art style, with the fighting, the combat, the boss fights. It's just so freaking cool too. Like, that's Game of the Year worthy. And then you got Final Fantasy, which is a dope ass game, you know, with all the combat and stuff. Well, I can't really say too much about Final Fantasy. I rarely got into the franchise, but I know a lot of people love it, and I know the game is really fucking good from what I've seen in the combat and stuff, the story mode. So yeah, that deserves Game of the Year also. And then you got freaking Balatro, which is a card game. Cool. So you got all these memorable games, except for Baltro, but you got all these memorable games right next to a DLC, which, is it really fair? Is it really fair for it to be up in that spot to win Game of the Year again, beating all these other great games? It's really difficult to try to be fair, saying Elden Ring should be nominated or should win Game of the Year when it's a DLC game and you got all these other kick-ass games right next to it. Do you let it be Game of the Year nominee? Do you let it win Game of the Year? Well, my thought is, I say you have Elden Ring up there just as a Game of the Year nominee, but you let some other game win at the same time. You know, maybe Black Myth Wukong or Astrobot, since those games are fucking dope as hell. But if Elden Ring wins Game of the Year, then I'm pretty sure that's gonna be a surprise to everyone, because no one expects a DLC to win Game of the Year, right? Like, it's dope as hell, but for it to win Game of the Year, that's a big fucking twist right there. Holy shit. But that's just my take. I really want to talk about this topic because I'm a massive fan of video games, and I'm a massive fan of Elden Ring, 300 hours of Elden Ring and stuff. So I really want to discuss this topic because it's just really complicated topic. You're gonna have to like go back into the rules and try to like change it a little bit. Maybe let DLC games have their own category. But we already discussed that there's not that much good DLC for 1 year to be its own category. In the end, it'll probably come down to like 2 or 3 DLCs to be nominated for DLC Game of the Year, whatever. But who knows? Maybe they'll change the rules later on in time. But like I said, who knows? I mean, there was probably a previous entry that was DLC that was nominated for a Game of the Year award. There was probably a remake from the past few years that was nominated for Game of the Year award. But we'll just have to like think about this for the future. Like, should DLC be allowed to run for Game of the Year? Now, what is my take on this? Well, I think Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, of course, should be nominated for Game of the Year. But it should not win Game of the Year. So go ahead, go vote for Black Myth Wukong, go vote for Astrobot, go vote for Final Fantasy, but don't vote for Balatro. Vote for whatever you want. Even Elden Ring. If you think Elden Ring actually deserves to win Game of the Year again, then go ahead, go vote on it. If you don't think it should be, then like I said, go vote on it. Remember, unlike the elections, your vote matters. But that's all I got for today. This is probably going to be a one-time video. I'm never going to do this ever again. But besides that, This is EA signing out. So yeah, later.